Before we get into the substance, let me say this plainly. If you value serious, well-researched military history and practical survival knowledge that actually works, subscribe to Atten Recounts now and share this with someone who still thinks wartime survival was just brute force and luck. This channel exists for people who care about details, context and lessons that outlived the war itself. Now, here is the hook, and stay with me because this matters. During World War II, millions of soldiers froze, not because heating methods didn't exist, but because doctrine, logistics, and battlefield risk made many effective techniques unusable at scale. Civilian engineers, resistance fighters, and pre-war architects quietly preserved older thermal knowledge that never made it into standard military manuals. Some of those methods were deliberately ignored because they produced smoke, required time, or couldn't be standardized. Yet today, stripped of combat constraints and electrical dependence, these same techniques still outperform many modern off-grid solutions. What follows are 6 heating methods rooted in the World War II era that soldiers largely never used in the field, but which still function reliably without power, fuel grids, or modern infrastructure. Why institutional armies avoided certain heating solutions even when they worked. Military heating doctrine during World War II prioritized mobility, concealment and speed. Anything that required construction time, produced visible heat signatures, or demanded local materials was usually rejected. Armies relied on issued stoves, fuel tablets, or body heat management rather than environmental heat engineering. Civilian populations, partisans and pre-industrial builders did not share those constraints. They optimized for endurance, insulation and fuel efficiency over weeks or months. That difference explains why many of the most effective heating tricks never appeared in soldiers' kits. Earth-coupled heat retention was ignored because it tied troops to one location. Earth-sheltered heating relies on the fact that soil temperature stabilizes just a few feet below ground. Soldiers avoided digging deep living spaces because of time, flooding risk and visibility. Civilians and resistance groups did the opposite. By cutting sleeping alcoves into hillsides or trench walls and sealing entrances with layered fabric and wood, they trapped geothermal stability. The practical application today is straightforward. Even a shallow earth berm built against one wall of a shelter reduces heat loss dramatically. A modern survivalist can replicate this by partially burying a shed or insulating the lower walls with packed soil and stone, achieving overnight warmth without burning a single calorie of fuel. Masonry heat storage systems were rejected due to, transport and setup demands. Masonry heaters, including tile stoves and stone heat banks, were pretty common across Europe before and during the war. They store heat from a short hot fire and release it slowly over many hours. But, soldiers could not transport masonry or wait for the thermal mass to charge, so these systems never appeared near front lines. Civilians, on the other hand, used them constantly. Applying this today means thinking beyond just metal stoves. Surrounding a simple firebox with stone, brick, or even dense clay allows heat to continue radiating long after the flames die. In practical terms, a single evening fire can warm a room through the night if the thermal mass is properly placed and insulated. Bed-based microclimate heating outperformed room heating but was, doctrinally dismissed. Military doctrine focused on warming spaces, not bodies. Civilian strategies did the opposite. Heated bed platforms, straw-filled sleeping cavities, and layered underbody insulation were far more efficient than trying to heat entire rooms. Soldiers rarely used these because rapid deployment and sanitation standards discouraged fixed sleeping structures. Today, this principle is actually quite easy to apply. Insulating beneath the body matters more than insulating above it. A raised sleeping platform packed with dry organic material, combined with wind-blocking curtains, can maintain livable warmth even in near-freezing air without any active heat sources. Controlled oxygen-restricted fires were just too dangerous for battlefield use. Low-oxygen combustion techniques, such as smouldering charcoal pits or enclosed ember chambers, were well known but rarely issued to troops due to, carbon monoxide risk and training limitations. Civilians understood how to manage airflow safely. These methods produced steady heat with minimal fuel and smoke. Applied carefully today, this translates into sealed fireboxes with controlled vents, always paired with proper exhaust paths. When used responsibly, such systems extract maximum heat from minimal wood, something modern campers and off-grid builders are frankly only rediscovering now. Textile-based heat containment was, often undervalued compared to more structural solutions. Armies, for instance, issued blankets and coats, but rarely thought to use textiles as actual architectural elements. Civilians, on the other hand, would hang heavy fabrics, layer rugs on their walls, and even create fabric airlocks. This simple approach trapped warm air and really cut down on those pesky convection losses. The application is, immediate and practical. Hanging thick cloth across doorways, lining walls with layered fabric, or setting up a sleeping enclosure within a larger room. These all dramatically reduce heat loss. And let's be clear, it's not primitive. It's actually quite thermodynamically efficient. Waste heat redirection was, certainly known, but usually impractical under combat conditions. Redirecting heat from cooking, lighting, or even human activity into living spaces just wasn't feasible for soldiers who cooked outdoors or were always on the move. Civilian shelters, though, captured every available heat source. Cooking areas were actually integrated into living quarters, and chimneys were routed right through sleeping spaces. Today, this means designing layouts where heat-producing activities serve more than one purpose. A simple example is positioning a cooking stove so that its exhaust path runs along an interior wall, warming it up before heading outside. These 6 techniques, you see, share a common theme. They weren't inferior to military solutions, rather they were just incompatible with military priorities. Once you take them out of those battlefield constraints, they reveal themselves as remarkably efficient, low-tech, and, honestly, quite resilient. For historians, they show how institutional doctrine can sometimes suppress effective knowledge. For survivalists, they offer methods that have been tested by time, methods that require no electricity, no modern fuel, and no specialized equipment. If this kind of deep, practical history matters to you, do consider subscribing to Atten Recounts and share this with someone who still thinks the past has nothing left to teach us. The lessons that kept civilians alive during the worst winters of the 20th century are still here, still working, and frankly, still waiting to be used.